Hi, welcome back to the channel. My name's Rebecca, I'm 44 years old, and I'm somebody who used to suffer from multiple sclerosis, who no longer experiences any of the symptoms since starting the carnivore diet nearly 2 years ago. I've been saying in my videos for quite some time now, a year and a half ago, but I've realized that actually I uploaded my first carnivore video when I was 1 week carnivore at the beginning of June. And now we're halfway through March, so that's actually nearly 2 years that I've been carnivore. Crazy. So today I wanted to talk about the topic of dating in the context of chronic illness, but also carnivore. I had in mind a different topic for today, but I woke up thinking about this, and so I thought, why not talk about what I actually feel like talking about, what's actually on my mind. So yeah, maybe it's a little bit personal, but I'm not one to not be open about my personal life. I've been very open about my personal life on my channel, and I found you guys to be an extremely supportive community for that. So I feel comfortable opening up to you guys and reflecting. And the thing is, I'm actually in a much better place than I have been in like a whole decade. And so while I'm going to be looking back on my dating history since becoming ill, and not all of that has gone well, I'm also looking back on that from a different place, from a place of health and wisdom, lessons learned, rather than being bogged down by the emotions of it all. So I feel like that's why I wanted to talk about it. That's why I feel comfortable to talk about it. I'm not in the place anymore that I was, and I've taken the time I needed to heal from what happened. Yeah, so maybe I'll get a little bit tense talking about these things. These, you know, they're bad memories, no doubt. And I have talked about them before, but as I say, it's from a position of having moved on from these memories and looking forward to the future. So yeah, it's not as sensitive as it once was. So I guess I'll start by talking about my relationship situation was when I first got ill. So I was 36 years old when I got sick, and I was single. So I was really focused on my career at that time in my life. It wasn't that I was against the idea of a relationship, but I simply didn't have time to go out socializing or to date, anything like that. I did actually have some casual dates back then. I did have a couple of casual dates, and then suddenly I got ill. And that was in the final year of my PhD. So I simply did not have time or energy to pursue a relationship or even think about anything like that. And then after I handed in my PhD, I completely crashed. Like completely. I was out of civilization, out of society, out of the human race. And that lasted for a couple of years. And not only that, but my body was completely alien to me. I didn't know what was happening in my body. I didn't understand it. I had no control over it, or so I thought at the time. And thoughts of relationships couldn't have been further from my mind. The idea of going out and socializing and connecting with people on that level was just out of the question. So unfortunately, that was basically the final years of my fertility. So that's where I ended up not having children. So that kind of pressure of being in your 30s and having to settle down and have children now or never was kind of taken out of my hands. And I just did not think about these things whatsoever for a long, long time. When I had my first upturn in health and I moved to Spain, I started to think, well, look, you see, before I got ill, I had this whole subconscious thing where I would avoid relationships. So subconsciously, I have pushed relationships away, intimate relationships away. I have had them, in fact. I was briefly married in my 20s. For 8 months, I was actually married, but I left him because I didn't want to go on to have children and get property and get further tied into it. I didn't want to be married, essentially. And so, I've been kind of happily single for much of my life, and independent, very independent with it. There was no need for me to have a partner because I was earning my own money. I was perfectly happy in my own company. I had plenty of friends, and it was just something that hopefully would come along in the future when I met the right person and had the right connection with them. Anyway, so when I moved to Spain, I wasn't bedridden, I wasn't housebound anymore. I wasn't using a wheelchair anymore. I had improved to some extent, although I was only halfway there. This was before I started the carnivore diet, but after I moved to the mountain. I also was living a whole new way of life, and it was a quite physically demanding way of life, and it involved learning new skills that were completely out of my comfort zone. I was always very academic and sort of book-based, word-based, and suddenly I was having to collect firewood and fix broken solar panel systems and, you know, plumbing and I don't know, just things I just had no clue about. So I started to realise, look, I actually have to accept that although I have this instinct to avoid relationships, even though in my head I like the idea of it, my body has always avoided them. I thought I'm going to have to just accept that I need a partner. I'm at a point in my life where I have a disability, I have a chronic illness that is life-limiting, and I may have improved somewhat, but not enough to live independently, not fully, and be able to also earn money. I need to have a partner. I need to be working in tandem with somebody. So I did actually join some dating apps, some Spanish dating apps at that point in my life. And I had a couple of dates, but I didn't, you see, the thing is, I wasn't my best self. I really wasn't. I wasn't looking after myself physically. I wasn't taking any care over my appearance. And I also had lost my confidence. Not that I had had a huge amount of confidence before, but I had even less because I just didn't know who I was anymore. I'd lost my identity. I was living a completely different life. My body, I couldn't rely on it anymore in the way that I'd always been able to. My zest for life had been dampened. I used to go out dancing all the time, for example. Suddenly, that was not something I could do. I used to go cycling. I used to be extremely sociable, stay up all night, you know, playing cards, playing board games, chatting, you know, just being a high energy person and a people person. And suddenly I was a hermit and I was very much isolated, and I didn't know how to channel my energy in a way that could be attractive to somebody. So I certainly wasn't my best self. So I went on a few dates with some Spanish guys, and they didn't go anywhere. So and then I lost even more confidence, feeling that I was, you know, perhaps I was going to be alone forever, but in a situation where I couldn't really afford to be alone. And I'd been alone for so long by that point that I was feeling the loneliness almost as a sickness in itself. I don't know if you've ever experienced that. I learnt on a very deep level, on a cellular level, that human beings aren't supposed to be alone. And I knew that this type of loneliness couldn't carry on. I had to find a way to put an end to it and be living with somebody, whether that's a partner or a friend. I needed a tribe, I needed a community, and it wasn't easy to get that. So imagine my surprise and delight when I signed up to Workaway, which is an internet site, an internet initiative where you can exchange accommodation and food for help from people who are traveling around and want to experience living in different places. And my first workaway was an English guy, British guy, 7 years younger than me, who I didn't see as a potential partner whatsoever because he was younger than me. He was very much, you know, attached to his phone, into his Instagram, AI, I don't know, just like a whole different world. And I didn't really feel like I connected with him particularly deeply, but he was very fun and energetic. And after a few months of living with me, we decided that we would go together to Turkey, to Göbekli Tepe, which is an archaeological site that's extremely interesting to me and which I wrote about in my novel that I wrote. And he said, "Oh, I'll take you there. I'll take you there in my little Citroen Berlingo van. Let's go. Let's go on this adventure." And this was a big deal for me to think that I would go traveling, van lifing across Europe as far as, you know, the Syrian border, and leave my dogs behind with this guy, you know, and just live like as if I was an adventurous 20-year-old again. And it blew my mind to think that I could do that. I could consider doing that. But I did it. I went ahead. I said, look, let's do it. And by agreeing to do it, we both knew there was an unspoken agreement that obviously we were going to be sharing a single bed because there was only one bed in his little van. And so we kind of both knew that was the deal. So shortly after that, he made a move, and I remember very clearly telling myself, just go with it, go with this. I didn't feel that way about him. I wasn't closed to him, but I was not in love with him. At no point in this relationship was I ever in love with this guy. But I also wanted the relationship. I knew that I couldn't continue to be alone. And so I invested myself in it. I invested myself in terms of my care towards him and my commitment to a future together. Because even before we set off on the traveling trip, he was buying me expensive jewelry and telling me things like, I'll stay with you on the mountain forever. I'll be your rock, which is hilarious because he ended up stoning me to death, basically. But yeah, it was all like, I'll be your rock. I will bring in an income. You won't have to worry. How could I refuse something like that in the situation that I was in? So I was not romantically, but on some level swept off my feet by the situation, the adventure of it, the future I was being promised, the idea that I wouldn't be alone, that there'd be somebody at my side who I did find attractive, but who I knew wasn't my soulmate. You know, it wasn't like that, but it was like maybe I could grow to love him, you know, and I was open to exploring it and to committing to it. So that's what happened. We went to Turkey. We had a great travel trip. I suppose there were signs, there were red flags even on that trip, but it wasn't anything too major. But when we got back from the travel trip, I guess that's when the cracks already started to show. So we were only a couple of months into the relationship at this point. And I think the points I want to draw out of this is that I was very vulnerable. I had got myself into this because I was so vulnerable. And that's why I allowed it to take root. And that's why I was so unwilling to let the relationship go once things got bad. The other point I want to make clear is that I'm relating this now to the carnivore diet, because it was when I was with him that I started the carnivore diet. So nearly 2 years ago, as I said. And that was during the time when the cracks were starting to show. So he was in a bit of a weird situation because he was British and he didn't have Spanish residency. So he was actually illegally in Spain. I'm not dobbing him in because I don't even know where he is now, if he's still in Spain. I've got no idea. I'm not interested. He's blocked. He's gone. But back then, he was illegally in Spain. And he was working for British expats, because he didn't speak Spanish, who knew that he was illegal, so none of them paid him for his work. He was a plumber and a solar panels engineer. And it was like this period of time when the cracks were starting to show. And by the cracks, I mean the narcissistic discard of me was starting to become apparent, but it was covert. So it wasn't like he was making it clear to me. I know now that he was talking bad about me behind my back to other people, but still choosing to stay with me and presenting a charming front to me, you know, and not letting me know that there was anything wrong particularly, but also eroding away my self-esteem. So there were sort of different levels to it, which were not apparent to me at that point, but I sort of sensed, but I also didn't want to sense because I just wanted it to be okay. I just wanted to work on the relationship and commit to it because we were talking about a shared future together, and I wanted that. So looking back, I can see the pattern of abuse that had started at that point. So I was kind of in denial about it. But because of Brexit, because of his illegality, he had to go to Morocco. So this is when I started the carnivore diet. He had to go to Morocco for 3 months, because it's 3 months in, 3 months out if you're not an EU citizen. That's the visa rules. And British people are no longer EU citizens. So he had to go to Morocco for 3 months. He couldn't come back. And because he was promising me that he would be earning money and bringing in a wage, and because he had been working, I had no reason to doubt that. But because he hadn't been paid, it ended up that he was now financially dependent on me. When I say me, I mean my father, because my poor dad has funded this entire abusive relationship, thinking that his daughter finally had met somebody and finally it was all going to be okay. And this was pretty disgusting stuff going on, basically. So my dad basically funded this guy's 3 months in Morocco. Hotels, I gave him my car to drive. I was paying for his phone bill because you can't get a phone contract in Spain if you don't have a Spanish ID number, and he was illegal, so I had to pay it. But he said, I want the latest iPhone, please, but I'll pay it back, don't you worry, I'll bring in the money, you won't be paying. But he never did. He never brought in a penny. So somehow it ended up where from him financially supporting me, suddenly he's freeloading off me. on an ongoing basis. And that is basically why he never left me. So although he's bad-mouthing me to people, I'm awful, I'm unhinged, I'm this terrible person, deflecting his failures, blame shifting, all of that, reactive abuse, you know, where they treat you horribly, but then your reaction they use against you, all of that. There was, like, without going into the ins and outs of it, that was basically the atmosphere that was starting to build. But I just, you know, I just kept giving him the benefit of the doubt and kept working to be the mature adult in the relationship, and I don't know, just try and, I guess, prove myself. So because I had a lot to learn about being in a relationship, because I was coming up from this, as I've described it many times, a deep sea trench that I'd been in, and trying to find my lightheartedness again, being in touch with my body again, trying to just be the best person I could be. And I was in the relationship in good faith, and I was trying my best in the relationship at all times. I really don't think that I was the unhinged, angry person that he was making me out to be to other people. Anyway, so the point I want to make is that I had been carnivore for a week when I went out to Morocco, and that was the moment when I realised this is not okay. Like this sense of being in a negative situation, I couldn't avoid anymore. When I got to Morocco, and he picked me up in my car from the ferry port, and we were using Google Maps to get back to the hotel where he was staying, paid for by me, and on his phone flashed up a number of messages from an unknown woman, and I could see the beginning of the messages, and one of them read, "As for this Rebecca thing," what? Like that was the moment when my well cracked. I knew that this was not what I thought it was. This relationship was not okay. Who was this woman? Why was she referring to me as a thing? And I turned and looked at him and I was like, what are you guys chatting about me? And he got rid of the messages and just carried on driving. He didn't say anything. That's the moment I should have left him. That was the moment, looking back. If I had been, you see, the thing is, I had only been carnivore for a week when I went out to Morocco. It was such a new situation. I was different. I'd been bloated and I'd lost the bloating. I was brighter. I was a bit more with it, you know, and I could see that he could see the difference immediately when he picked me up from the ferry port. But I hadn't yet gained the confidence in myself, the strength to be badass, which is what I'd like to think, that I've become badass again now. I wouldn't put up with that kind of crap now. But at that time, it was still very hard for me to take on board that I would have to lose this relationship in order to be my best self, in order to come into my full carnivore self. And I almost didn't believe that I was better again. It was such a shocking, magical miracle that had happened. So I that's the only way I can understand why I didn't. What I should have done, and it would have saved me so much pain if I'd done this, what I should have done is when those messages popped up from that woman referring to me as a thing, I should have asked him to stop the car. I should have taken back my phone that I was paying for. I should have got in the car and I should have driven back to Spain, back to my dogs. I should have left him in the middle of Africa with no money, no phone and no vehicle, and just gone on my merry way. And if I had done that, I would have saved myself so much pain. But I didn't. What I did instead was use my carnivore self to fight for the relationship. And the way he put it to me was that later on, because I nearly did walk away later on when things got even worse, but he hoovered me back in, and you know, I got this long letter and all the things I wanted to hear, you know, oh, it's you I want to be with, you know, I want to stay with you forever, I'm so sorry, I lost my way when I was in Morocco. That's what he led me to believe, that he had completely lost his way when he was in Morocco, and I don't know. Anyway, I hadn't seen him for a few months, and I thought he needs to be reminded of the great thing that we've got, you know, this little world that we've got up the mountain, and the plans that we have. He's lost his way. So I fought for the relationship instead of just leaving, and that was my big mistake. Although I did have some success in that area, and that was part of where I started to gain my confidence, because carnivore me was more attractive than non-carnivore me, and he knew it. And so by the end of the 2 weeks that we were in Morocco together, which were probably, it was the worst holiday of my life, it was absolutely awful. Things happened that I don't even want to discuss. But we talked, and by the time we left, before we left, we were physically involved again and planning our future again. So we eventually got back to Spain, and we were back together, and fully back together, and we went back up the mountain together. And I wasn't happy with him. This was not a love relationship, and I knew that it was actually a toxic relationship, but I still wasn't ready to give up on it just yet, because it's always the way, isn't it? When you're in an abusive relationship, it's so hard to leave. The mind games and you doubt yourself, you know, and the way that it was it seemed like a lot of the abuse or the interference was coming from the outside, when in fact what that was him sowing the seeds of conflict all around, and then allowing people to weigh in on the situation, so that it seemed like that was what was going on. They were flying monkeys. That's what it was. It's triangulation and flying monkeys. But because it was a covert narcissistic relationship, to me, in our little bubble, everything was fine. Like it seemed like when it was just the two of us in our little bubble, everything was fine. But as soon as we were in the outside world, everyone was crazy. Everyone was coming banging at my door and sending me abusive text messages, and then they ganged up and accused me of murdering him. That was the apex of the entire thing. There was this completely psychotic woman who spread this rumor in writing to third parties that I was literally a murderer, which is defamation. Oh my God. And it's like, who am I fighting against here? And when I went to the police to report what she was doing, they took it seriously. They were like some of the only people who took it seriously, and they already knew her because of some other crazy drama she'd managed to get herself into. And they literally rolled their eyes. They were like, oh, her, right, okay. Do you want to press charges? And I said no, because I didn't want to visit yet more drama upon my partner at the time, ironically, because he was at the root of all the drama. And I just didn't know what reality I was in. I was so lost in the fog of this relationship and my needs, and caring about his needs, and trying to protect his reputation, trying to find a way to protect our future, hoping that this was all just a crazy nightmare that was going to come to an end, and that we would start fresh, and just wanting to give it the best chance. And I by then, of course, I was attached to him, because how can you not become attached to somebody when you're involved on that level, especially because I'd been alone for so long. You know, I had people contacting me, complete strangers, telling me things about my character that were completely untrue, and there was the moment that I realised actually that he was at the root of it, because how could these people arrive at these conclusions that were so out of whack with what was going on? Some woman called Lenny down south, who I'd never met, never had any contact with, writing to me, telling me what she thinks she knows about my character, and me realising in that moment she could only have got this impression from him. And that was when my heart broke and my spirit started to break, and I knew that this was not salvageable. And he said, oh, do you want me to talk to her? That's not cool what she said. And I was like, yes, please do let her know that she's got me all wrong. Of course I'll do that, Raji. Of course I will. He called me Raji. Of course he never did. And then when it came up further down the line, it was like, yeah, I'm not going to go calling people and having a go at them. And I'm just like, I just, every step I took to try and restore sanity and support in this situation somehow led to more toxicity, more mind games. I was trapped in a web, and the only way out of that web was to break up the little family that we had together, me, him and the dogs, which meant the world to me. And it had such an impact because I ended up selling my mountain cabin and moving away because I couldn't stand to be in the area anymore with the flying monkeys all banging on my door, with abusive text messages, literally threats to call the police on me, and then him not defending me, him not saying a damn word in my defense, and me knowing it but still finding myself unable to leave him. Like one of the most awful things I've experienced in my life. It nearly finished me off. If I hadn't been carnivore, I think it would have finished me off. All the way along it, I had this thread of strength that, okay, I can deal with this because I have my health. At the very least, I have my health. So I'm not going to let this get on top of me. Anyway, relationships with narcissists never get better. There's no way out without pain, and that's what I experienced. So what happened was I eventually did kick him out, and he came crawling back a week later, because they don't let go as long as they can see there's an interest in it for them. When I finally kicked him out and I blocked him, and I started to speak badly about him online, which was actually, it wasn't out of vengeance, it was out of wanting him to know, I don't care about your image, I'm not going to protect your image anymore, knowing that that was the only thing that mattered to him, knowing that that's the one thing that would stop him crawling back to me, because he would blacklist me for doing that. So I started talking about the fact that I'd kicked him out as my only protection from him. And that's what's happened. I've never heard from him since I started doing that, and I couldn't be more relieved about that. So he is gone, he's blocked, and he's not come crawling back since I started to talk about him in a negative light. So fine. And that was a year ago now, and I spent the past year, this is where I want to get to in the video. This is where my thoughts are. I've revisited it only to fill in the dots if you haven't been following my channel. So now I was living in a different part of Spain, and I was recovering from this abusive relationship, and the depression was really quite strong. You know, I didn't know what had hit me. I didn't know how I could recover my self-esteem, my broken spirit. You know, I was miserable. I missed Asturias. I missed my friends in Asturias, because although I lost many friends in this situation, many dear friends actually, I still did have friends, and the ones that I was still friends with were the ones who had reacted with horror to what they saw happening. They were the only people I could now trust. Even if they just had 2 seconds of horror flash across their face, I didn't expect them to take on the issues. But if I saw that expression of horror, then I knew this person sees me in this situation, they see the situation. They're the only people I can now be friends with and trust from those times. And they have proved to be real friends. So I know who my tribe is because of this situation, which I suppose is a good outcome. You go through this and it filters out all of the false friends, the people who minimize it, who laugh it off, who distance themselves. All of those people were never my friends. I made friends with all the wrong people when I first arrived in Spain, and now I know who my friends are. So that's a positive outcome from all of this. And I also know myself a lot better. It was almost like when I got sick, I had to relearn how to be an adult. It was like I was a child again. Like I had no boundaries. I was completely trusting of anybody who came smiling to me. And I had to relearn lessons I'd already learned in my life. Very harsh lessons in order to get my boundaries back and my strength back. So I think that was part of the process of healing from the chronic illness, and a painful process of relearning what the world is like and what people are like, and getting my wits about me again and my defenses up. So now I don't put up with crap anymore. I would never get myself into a situation like that anymore. Do I regret it? Sometimes, yeah. But do I look back on it and realize the lessons that I've learned and feel grateful for the place I'm now in? Yes, I feel much better about my life in Asturias, because I came back to Asturias. That was the best thing I could have done. I spent a year in Galicia coming to terms with everything that had happened, living out the depression of not getting over him, but getting over the impact he had on my life, and forgiving myself for allowing it to go on so long. It lasted a year and a half, which, you know, some people are in these things for a lot longer, so it relatively short period of time, but absolutely horrific. So I did, that time was very important that I spent in Galicia suffering, you know, the after effects, and just facing them head on, you know, and learning the lessons I had to learn. And in my head, I was like, well, wouldn't it be great to just meet someone else and it just be like, move on? But I did have the opportunity for a couple of relationships when I was in Galicia, but my body was like, no way, no way. I was all frozen up. It was like I'd been violated. Well, I had been violated actually on quite a deep level, and my body knew it. You know that book, The Body Knows the Score? Like when you go through trauma, your body knows it more than your brain does. And I couldn't get into relationships, even though I had 2 or 3 opportunities, and some of those guys were really nice. Maybe they would have been good relationships, but I wasn't in a place where I could invest myself on that level at that time. Now that I've come back to Asturias, and I do feel like I've taken the appropriate time to process everything, learn the lessons, get back on my feet again, come back to Asturias, and I'm so happy. It's like I'm a whole person again. I'm back in my place where I feel like I'm at home, and it's better than it was before because I know who my friends are and I know my way around the place, and I've got my health back, but I'm not stuck in this stupid relationship anymore. I'm free of that. And I'm even earning money, and I'm even going to yoga, and my life is busy and full and happy. So now I could bring something to a relationship. I feel like now I could be a good partner to somebody. I don't need them in order to help me survive. I'm surviving. I'm independent. I'm back to how I was before I got sick. And I've learned so much on this journey about relationships, about what I'll put up with and what I won't. There's a lot to celebrate. There's a lot to celebrate about where I am now as a carnivore, healthy, productive, busy. And it's just like in the back of my mind, I'm like, I know that I'm ready for a relationship now. This is the most ready I've been for a relationship since before I got ill. And that's not because I desperately want that. I'm not in a position of desperation. It's because I know that if I did meet somebody, I could bring something to the table. It would be fine. You know, I know who I am now. I've come into my carnivore self. However, I don't want to join a dating app. I did briefly join a dating app before I came back to Asturias because I had a hunch that I basically felt pretty much healed, and that I would be in a new situation, and that, you know, that I'd probably start looking after myself more, and I just had a feeling that that's the way things were going to go. So I did join Hinge. Yasmin, stop it. I'm filming a video. You've already had your dinner. I did have a sense that this is the phase I was moving into and that I would be ready. So I did join Hinge, and then I got talking to this guy who was really, really nice, and we were just voice messaging each other, you know, text messages. We hadn't met. And then he stalked me online and found my social media, my YouTube channel, and was like, oh, I don't like your stance on vaccines, and I don't like the way you're living your life. And I think that by that he meant my carnivore diet, because he was a chef, and I think he was more like food for pleasure and I'm like food for health. I don't know. So I kind of got a bit disillusioned by the whole online dating app thing. Like I don't like them. I just, not for me. That's not a natural way to meet people. Like I like to meet people in person and connect with them, not online. So I kind of haven't done the dating app thing. I'm not out there. The point being, I'm not actually out there trying to meet people, but I am open to meeting people. And I believe that when you are open, the universe manifests. So I feel like, yeah, here I am. I'm ready to date again. And it is thanks to Carnivore. It's 100% thanks to Carnivore. I got into that abusive relationship before I was Carnivore. I should have left the relationship sooner. Sure, that was my big mistake, but I dragged it out, trying to fix it by being Carnivore. It couldn't be fixed because this was somebody deeply toxic, and finally got the strength to kick him out, but then used my Carnivore strength to survive the after effects of that relationship, and then gradually came into my strengths as a Carnivore in order to become a whole person again, and a strong and happy person again, to be able to now offer something to a potential partner in the future. So yeah, it's been a long journey to get to this place, but yeah, I think it's a sign of the fact that I really am healed now. I'm not saying that there's not more healing to be done. I'm sure there is, but I'm ready for that to be in the context of a relationship. So yeah, so I just wanted to reflect on that and share that happy piece of news that I've reached this new stage in my life. But the other thing I wanted to mention is that I have now started booking in carnivore interviews with other people, with other carnivores, with people with chronic illnesses, and I'm really excited about that. It's something I talked about doing quite a while ago, but that was when I was still in the depression, and then I was moving house, and I've only just got to grips with StreamYard and how to actually do that. So, but I've got some really amazing people lined up to have conversations with, interviews with. My idea is to maybe do one video a week at the weekend of my normal content, and then upload an interview perhaps midweek with a guest, you know. So that's the idea I have at the moment. I often say what I'm going to do in the future on the channel and then I don't fulfill it, so don't hold me to that. But that's the current plan I've got. I love including other voices on the channel. So yeah, if you would like to be interviewed, let me know. If you've got a story to tell, if you've got any wisdom you'd like to share, or if you'd just like to have a cool conversation, please do get in touch. My email address is available on the YouTube channel info. So as always, I hope you're all doing great, and I will see you guys in the next video. Take care. Bye.